The Japanese government has drawn up the guideline, or rather the outline of its reconstruction plan for areas devastated by the March 11th disaster. The outline calls for setting up special reconstruction districts where deregulation will be promoted and fast-track procedures will be made available to utilize land. Easing tax burdens and providing financial support will also be considered. The outline also calls for building advanced solar energy and wind power generation systems to promote renewable energy businesses and creating eco-friendly towns in the disaster-hit areas. Regarding the nuclear disaster at the Fukushima Daiichi power plant, the outline proposes a research institute to be set up to help decontamination activities in the prefecture with the cooperation of universities and companies. The government hopes to decide a basic policy based on the outline by the end of this month.
Listen carefully. This is the sound of the seismic shift in Japan's energy debate. Away from nuclear energy, say 20,000 people on a day of protests in Tokyo, to renewable, sustainable sources. Coming on the heels of the likely full meltdown of 3 reactors at the Fukushima nuclear plant. We need electricity, but we can't put lives at risk, says Kentaro Morisawa. He adds, we have to be responsible for our children. Japan's energy for the next generation may be here, in this empty lot, just the size of 4 baseball parks. It doesn't look like much, says Accenture's managing director Yuji Nishimura, but don't be fooled.
So this is the future?
Yes, this is the future.
On this land, no coal, no nuclear energy.
No nuclear energy, no coal.
An environmentally smart town, self-sustainable, producing 0 emissions. This is Fujisawa, just outside of Tokyo. Panasonic Corporation owns the land and with 8 other Japanese companies sees this private venture as the environmentally friendly subdivision of the future. 1,000 households connected on a smart grid, designed to be green from the ground up. Houses built to reduce carbon footprints like Panasonic's Eco House, which serves as a model for the smart town's homes.
Is this the primary change in the Eco House?
Yes, it's here, says Hiroyuki Morita, in the rooftop solar power panels, lithium battery power storage, and energy-saving designs in every appliance and corner of this house. Morita calls it the beginning of an energy revolution.
How much changed after the nuclear crisis began?
We used to think of getting energy from one single big infrastructure, he explains, like the Tokyo Electric Company's nuclear plants. He adds Japan's earthquake and nuclear crisis changed everything. People want to get energy on a smaller individual scale. But that's easier said than done. Japan gets an estimated 30% of its energy from nuclear power. Even anti-nuclear activists admit that shifting to renewables means less consistent, reliable energy sources, and that's a tough sell in an energy-hungry metropolis like Tokyo. But in the ongoing nuclear crisis, consumers now want to buy into an eco-town like Fujisawa, say the corporations behind the project. Government can't answer that desire immediately, but private groups can. It's not only in Japan, but the world. We expect this sort of development will spread. A small idea with a big promise and challenge, and hopes to solve an even larger worldwide energy crisis. Kyung-la, CNN, Fujisawa, Japan.
Nobody has bothered us until last year, the 29th of June. That was the beginning of my nightmare.
I'm getting scared. I'm really getting scared, you know. I'd really make it on what I have now.
This desolate patch of desert on the outskirts of Los Angeles County is known as the Antelope Valley. Few people want to live here, and the collection of rugged individualists who do are being chased away by what the county officials call nuisance abatement teams. Armed county inspection squads that target zoning and code violations. The plight of these desert dwellers made regional headlines when Kim Fahey's home, known as Phonehenge, was raided by a nuisance abatement team. A colorful castle built by Fahey himself out of old telephone poles, Phonehenge was a gift to the media, which covered the county's prosecution of Fahey as an offbeat, human interest story. But Fahey was convicted of 12 misdemeanors. He's been jailed and forced to destroy his own home. So have many other Valley property owners targeted by the county's code enforcement forces, and many of these folks have even fewer resources than Fahey.
This guy had this property for sale for a good price. So I came out here and looked at it and said, wow, this is pretty cool.
Joey Gallo is a retired Army veteran who served during the Vietnam era. Last year, the county began performing unannounced inspections on his property.
Government came out and they told me that my bushes and stuff out here had to be cut back. I said, okay, no problem.
Gallo says he cooperated with the county, clearing brush, then moving a shed, then getting rid of his motorhome. Finally, the county made a demand that shocked him. They
told me, you have to get off the property. I said, I get off the property. He said, well, yeah, you can't live here.
Gallo says county officials told him that neighbors, whom they would not identify, had complained about unsightly structures on his property. He could keep his land, they told him, but would not be allowed to live on it.
I looked at them and I said, well, for what? My closest neighbor is like a half a mile away. We're not living in Beverly Hills here. This is my home. All of a sudden, I got police at my front door, bulletproof vests, guns, and then they surrounded the place. Everything I worked for, was like just melting away from me. I don't know where I'm going to go. I really don't.
Miles from Gallo, in a remote corner of the Antelope Valley, Oscar Castaneda has also been ordered to destroy his own property. Castaneda is a mechanic and a Seventh-day Adventist preacher, and he also happens to own the church where the movies Kill Bill 1 and 2 were shot. Like many of the residents here, Castaneda and his wife grow their own food, supply their own power with solar panels, and their own water from a well. Their green energy lifestyle is a choice, not subsidized by the government.
As a member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we believe in living independent of the city, living by yourself.
Castaneda lived in the desert for 22 years without any help from or problems with the government. That changed last year.
The city and some other cars drew right into my property. They said that they were here to help me. And I don't know in which way they are helping me.
The government officials, who had entered without a warrant, left after taking pictures, says Castaneda. But this was the first of many visits.
If you don't know the rights, you don't have any. So when they came the first time, the second time, the third time, and the fourth time, I didn't know that I had to ask them for a warrant.
Members of the nuisance abatement team began pointing out compliance problems, too many vehicles on the property, improper water tank, and so on. All of these, the county said to him, are a nuisance and a danger to his neighbors.
Right here, going looking north, there is no neighbor. There are 1 and 2 abandoned houses. I don't have no neighbors over here, let's say 10 miles, and no neighbors over here, another 10 miles. So I'm living in the middle of nowhere, okay, and I'm not bothering anyone.
The county ordered Castaneda to get a building permit to keep his home on the property, but will not issue a permit unless he connects to the county's power grid and drills a new water well.
Between $75,000 and $100,000 to bring the electricity to my lot. The only way I have is move out of here. As a matter of fact, I already started doing that.
Castaneda and Gallo are only 2 of many such targets of Los Angeles County's nuisance abatement teams, which were commissioned in 2006 by County Supervisor Mike Antonovich. But the county's heavy-handed tactics are beginning to spur resistance. The story of the Nat raids was told by LA Weekly reporter Mars Melnikoff recently.
They're picking on people who are the most defenseless and have the least resources, and also a lot of the time are most unknowledgeable about their rights.
A group called the Antelope Valley Truckers Organization is fighting back against the county.
You people are the majority. It's we the people. Stand up for your shit.
At this meeting, several attendees had horror stories about encounters with the county.
They had flak jackets on, sidearms, taser guns, M16s, paintball guns.
I lost $2,500 of income because they said that my mobile homes were illegal.
This is intimidation. This is domestic terrorists. This is trespassing.
They said that we had to get rid of everything we have. They pointed to the dirt and said, see that ground right there? We want your whole place to look like that.
But why is the county intent on driving these loners, who rely on themselves and seemingly affect nobody, out of this desert? There are many theories from those being pushed out.
I think it's a future development, putting a highway through here. I think, when the airport comes, it land property's going to be worth something.
There's the high desert corridor, which goes from the 14 to the 15. If they can get people off their property and buy that land cheap, somebody can make a lot of money.
I believe it's more control. If they have you living in one place, they can control you better.
Clearing way for an airport or a highway, making plans for housing developments, maybe high-speed rail. This video from the county's Department of Regional Planning contains lengthy descriptions of process, but no insight about the government's goal for land it has cleared of residents.
Gathering community members at 4 different locations across the valley, we first created a common vision for the future.
But to get some real answers, we had to ask the county officials themselves. Unfortunately, our interview requests were turned down by County Supervisor Mike Antonovich, Deputy District Attorney David Campbell, the Los Angeles County Planning Department, the LA County Department of Public Works, and the Antelope Valley Department of Regional Planning. So we decided to attend a County Board of Supervisors meeting to ask Mike Antonovich why these individuals are being forced from their homes.
We had made a few requests to talk with Mr. Antonovich to no avail, so that's why I'm here, just to ask a few questions and hopefully get a few answers. We want to know how using nuisance abatement teams to force Antelope Valley residents to destroy their houses and vacate their properties is in the public interest. And that's directed at Mr. Antonovich.
Perhaps I can clarify that the time for public comment doesn't require responses.
We were informed that Antonovich was not required to respond in this public venue, and at the conclusion of the time, Antonovich simply requested written record of the questions and said he would get back to us. Afterwards, we were approached by Antonovich's press secretary, Tony Bell, who refused to comment on camera, but said that the county is simply responding to code violation complaints from neighbors in the area, and any speculation about redevelopment is purely a conspiracy theory. Meanwhile, for a purpose that nobody knows, the county continues driving away the few people who still want to live there.
Anything not covered in the area plan is covered by the countywide general plan. If the general plan is like a house with all the basic rooms, an area plan is like an addition to a house. It adds additional value for some residents, but could not stand alone from the main house. People showed us where the key centers of activity were, what areas were right for what kinds of development, and what places should be preserved. The public can still provide input at every step of the way, so please stay tuned.
This is a map of the Wildlands Project. To explain the map, the red are areas that are to be off limits to human beings. No resource development, no human activity. If you live there, you won't. The yellow areas are the areas for major control of all human activity. If you live there, you won't. The black areas, the black dots, are the smart growth zones. That's where human beings are to be stacked and packed in small living units, along rail tracks. The Smart Growth Program ultimately has jobs assigned and children cared for by the state.
The question has been asked many times how the people who are perpetrating these things expect to do this and make it last. And the answer to that is that you steal a generation of children and you indoctrinate them so that they accept these ideas and they become global citizens in the coming global village.
UNESCO came out and declared 2005 to 2015 the decade of education for sustainable development. But they go on to say that it will encompass the 40 chapters of Agenda 21. That is your federal national curriculum. The entire purpose of second grade social studies is to transfer loyalty from the family to the government and teach them about sustainable economic consumption. Students construct their own understandings of reality and realize that objective reality is not knowable. So why bother? The truth is, the truth which keep men free is being suppressed in order to prop up the attitude training agenda. And it moves on. This is our new math called connected mathematics. Standard 3 tells us that students learn that mathematics is man-made, that it is arbitrary, and good solutions are arrived at by consensus. Most of us assume 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4. You're wrong. We might reach a new consensus. How well does it work? Well, they tell you in the teacher's guide in the back, it tells us that because the curriculum doesn't emphasize arithmetic computations done by hand, some students may not do as well on tests assessing computational skills. We believe such a trade-off in the favor of CMP is very much to the student's advantage in the world of work. Our children are mathematically illiterate on purpose. How do I know on purpose? Why isn't this just a basic bad idea? Because the Sustainable Development Plan tells us so. Generally, more highly educated people who have higher incomes consume more resources than poorly educated people who tend to have lower incomes. In this case, more education increases the threat to sustainability. Charlotte Iserby, I owe you an apology. I did not believe for the longest time it was a deliberate dumbing down. I thought the dumbing down was a natural consequence of a bad idea. Folks, it's deliberate. It's deliberate.
The sustainable globalist goal is the orchestration of a planned fall of American principles, values, and lifestyles. The effect on the average American will be devastating. With modernizing technology, the ordinary person will live without independence, privacy, or substantive rights.
Another press conference that I attended was the ICLE group, the International Committee for Local Environmental Initiatives. It helps in the implementation of Agenda 21 in all of our local communities. And one of the speakers was a Harvey Reuven, who happens to be the vice chair of ICLE. And I asked him about the correlative rights that Americans derive from the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And that, of course, is your individual liberties, your private property, your freedom of speech. Asked about it clashing with Agenda 21. And you know what his response was? Individual rights must take a back seat to the collective.